Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyau Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, Sarvas Sarvatra Nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we have been studying this set of verses in chapter 13, which give the qualities necessary in order for us to become fit to acquire that highest knowledge. So there are in total 20 essential qualities are mentioned here, and we have seen 9 of these. So before we see the remaining, let's chant these verses together from 7 through 11. Amanitvam adambhitvam ahimsa kshantirarjavam acharyopasanam shaucham स्थैर्यमात्म विनिग्रहः इंद्रियार्थेषु वैराग्यम् अनहंकार एव च जन्म मृत्यु जरा व्याधि दुःख दोषानुदर्शनम् असक्तिरनभिष्वङ्गः पुत्रदारगृहादिषु नित्यं च समचित्तत्वम् इष्टानिष्टोपपत्तिषु मयि चानन्ययोगेन भक्तिरव्यभिचारिणी विविक्तदेशसेवित्वम् अरतिर्जनसंसदि अध्यात्मज्ञाननित्यत्वम् तत्त्वज्ञानार्थदर्शनम् एतज्ज्ञानमिति प्रोक्तम् अज्ञानं यदतोऽन्यथा. So last time we did verse 7, so let's look at verse 8. Indriyartheshu vairagyam. It's translated here as a dispassion for sense objects. What it means is a detachment from sensuality. Now, all of the knowledge that we get in the world is through the senses. Our senses are kind of windows. Suppose you're sitting in a room, and the room has 5 windows in different directions. And through every window, you will have a different view if they are facing in different ways. Suppose it's a pentagonal room, so 5, and so through each of those walls, you will have a different view. A little bit like that, we are sitting in this room of the body, and you could say it has 5 windows. Through one window come all the visuals. Through one window come all the sounds. Through one window come all the smells. Through one window we get the touch. Through one window the taste. And that's essentially the world in which we live. A world, when we say, I'm experiencing the world, the experience really is nothing but a bunch of these things: sight, sound, taste, smell, and touch in various combinations. How do we know, or how do we claim that something exists? In order for something to exist, I must either be able to see it, or taste it, or touch it, or smell it, or or hear it. If not through these senses, at least by my mind. So maybe there may be something that I may not be able to see through the senses, but my mind can at least imagine it. But sometimes if it's simply dependent on the mind, we are not always sure whether it's really there the way I'm able to see it through the senses. Because mind can also imagine things which are still there in imagination, but which may not have a material counterpart. In either case, our existence of anything is dependent on what our senses gather and what our mind, which coordinates all these sensations together, can interpret. So what does detachment from sensuality means? Now, in order for us to get knowledge right now, the senses are the doorways through which the knowledge of the world comes. But sensuality is different from the senses. So if senses are used only to get knowledge, to learn from the information that the senses bring us, that's fine, because that's the only way for us to learn. But if instead of simply learning from it, I get caught up in it, then that sense knowledge, it's no longer simply knowledge. Then it becomes sensuality. Now, what does sensuality mean is simply this, that once I become bound by whatever it is that the senses bring to me, then I get, to that extent, I get detached from my own self. I get detached from who I really am. I get a very distorted idea of me, my purpose in life, and so on. And that is why sensuality, or getting immersed in the senses, is decried in spiritual texts. We might think, well, what's wrong with it? If it makes me happy, why should I not be happy? Of course, everyone wants to be happy. There's no, the spirituality doesn't mean saying goodbye to happiness. In fact, spirituality says there is a better way to become happy. There is a way to get happiness that is not short-term, short-lived. There is a way to become happy forever. So we have a choice. Do we want a short-term happiness or a long-term happiness? And some of us might make the choice, well, I don't mind short-term happiness because it's quick. It's something that seems more easily reachable, and something I can be sure will come to me in a reasonable amount of time. Because the long-term happiness, the happiness which will never end, it's such an open-ended thing. When will I get it? Well, keep on doing your spiritual practice. Someday you're going to be free, then you will be eternally happy. Now, some people say, well, that just seems too ambiguous. That just seems too vague, too abstract. But it's a choice that we have to make. We cannot have both. We cannot say, well, let me have a short-term one, and at the same time, let me strive for a long-term one. Doesn't work that way. Because the moment I get caught up in the short-term one, to that extent, I become blind to the long-term one. Now, there is a joy, there is happiness in the struggle itself, but that sometimes takes time to experience. So, if we sometimes tend to think that spiritual struggle, the word struggle, doesn't seem to imply too much happiness doing it. That's true, but at some stage during our spiritual struggle, even before you have become enlightened, even before you have realized God, you will begin to experience the joy of struggle. There is also a joy of self-restraint. And sometimes in text it's called shama sukham. That is, it's like this. Let's say you enjoy, as an example, you enjoy, say, eating sweets a lot. And at some point, for health reasons or whatever reason, you decide, well, I need to control sugar, and I need to say now no to sweets. Now, saying no to something that you really enjoy doesn't seem to be a very happy experience. It's like, wow, I'm really going to be upset. It's like, oh, it's here right in front of me, and I'm saying no to it. Now, if someone is forcing you not to eat it, then there's no problem. Then there is really, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm just speaking about voluntary withdrawal. So here is something, it's a sweet, let's say, and the doctors have told you not to take sweets. And so you make a conscious decision. Although if I want, I can take it, I don't want it. So it's not a happy experience in the beginning. Sure, all of us who have tried to say no to what we like, we know it's not a very happy experience. But if not right away, after a while, you get another kind of happiness, that I was able to have this control. I was able to say no to something that I really wanted. And that joy of having yourself under your control is a much higher kind of joy. If you had actually eaten that sweet, you would have been happy. But once that's, how long can you keep? No matter, even if you nibble at it slowly like fish do, at some point it's going to get finished. Once it's over, that's it. Then not only will your happiness end, just the memory of it will remain, but also it might bring even more sorrow. It's like, oh, I wish there was one more. And so that happiness has an end. It's short term, it's quick, but it also ends. On the other hand, if you have said no, the joy of just control, the joy that I was able to do something which would have been so difficult for me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or something which is so much difficult for everyone else, but I was able to do it. So that joy of achievement is a much, and this joy won't disappear in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It is with you, so long as you're able to hold on to it, so long as you're able to maintain that self-restraint. And so I would like to emphasize that although we use the term spiritual struggle, it might seem like, oh, only like some distant time when I become enlightened, then only all that joy will come. Until that time, I have to forego all these immediate joys of the world and just struggle. No, it's not like that. There is a joy in the struggle as well. And this joy of the struggle, the joy of meeting the several milestones on our spiritual journey is a much, much higher kind of joy, which remains with us for a much, much longer period. And that's why detachment from sensuality has to be seen in that positive light. Because all these terms like detachment, renunciation seem very negative if we don't look at it straight. But if you look at it deeply, they are more positive than anything that we can think of. Anahankara means no ahankara, ego, lack of ego. How is it translated here? Absence of egoism. Now, we have seen this on earlier occasion. Ego, why? Ego in itself is not problematic. What is ego? Ego simply is the sense of I. Not a problem really, just I. The problem is with egoism. When does ego lead to egoism. When this simply I attaches itself to something or the other, then it becomes egoism. So simply a sense of I, not so much problematic. And the example I sometimes like to give is this. Sometimes you have really had good sleep, let's say. You really slept well, and you woke up naturally, not with some alarm ringing or things like that. So you had a good sleep, and you wake up naturally. And don't make any sudden movements in your bed. So you wake up naturally, very gradually, you just sit up in your bed, and then you look out of the window, and then you see maybe it's springtime, and then you just see a beautiful garden, or the clouds, or the sun is rising. And if you had a really restful sleep, for the first few seconds, your I is there. You know you exist. But it's a very blissful state. It's a wonderful state. Until that I attaches itself to something like, oh, I've got to rush, I've got to do this. Or even if you start thinking like, oh, how beautiful this garden is, I need to do some weeding tomorrow, I need to work in the garden. So once that I attaches itself to any object that you see, or any mental plans or things that you need to do, then that I it's not simply I anymore. And that's why just a sense of I, ego itself, is not such a big problem. The problem is what it attaches to. And therefore Ramakrishna made this kind of category. He said an unripe I and a ripe I. And he said an unripe I is I, the sense of I, that attaches itself to all the perishable, changing entities. So, and clearly, most of the time, our I is attached to this body and mind. That's why we refer to this as I. But this is a perishable entity. The body is a perishable entity. And because my I is attached to it, when it's time for the body to perish, the I is upset. I can't. That's why we don't want to think about our death. But really, it's not our death. It's really the death of the body. But my I is attached to it, so I feel I don't want to die. When there is a breakdown in the body, when there is an illness, again, because my I is attached to it, I inherit all the pains and aches of the body. When my I is attached to the mind, I inherit all the anxieties, fears, worries of the mind. So simply I, no problem. But the I is attached to any of these things, that's a problem. And I doesn't remain attached to just this body and mind. Clearly, I is mostly attached to the body and mind because they are the closest, seem closest to us. But the I is also attached to other things. And this I then manifests as mine. So I don't say, I am this book, but I say this book is mine. So I'm attached to this book. My I is attached to this book, not as me, but as mine, as my possession. And then of course, like my family, my friends, my world, my country. So everything that you can qualify with the term my, your I is attaching itself to it. And every time the I is attaching itself to it, it's getting caught. Sometimes you see let's say an engine of a train, engine of a train. If it's simply the engine that's moving, well, it doesn't have any load to carry. It can really go at whatever speed it wishes to, or it can. But the more the number of cars you attach to that engine, it's going to carry a heavier load. It's going to move slowly. So look upon the I as the engine. And the more this I is attached to, the more load it has to carry, the more burden it has to carry. And so when we are told about detachment, it really means Try to look at all these cars attached to your engine and see, do you really need all these cars? Why don't you see whichever can be detached from this thing? If the number of cars are fewer, you'll be able to move faster. And so that's the goal in spiritual life. Ultimately, keep on examining. If you are this engine, keep on examining how many cars are attached to your engine and try to minimize the load. And then your journey will become smoother and easier. So that is what ahankara. One more thing ahankara does. I said the simplest sense of I is not a problem. But this I doesn't remain unattached for too long. That's the problem. I just gave that example about waking up in the morning and first few moments, it's a really wonderful state. Not quite like being in samadhi, pretty close to it. But after a few seconds, even if you don't get attached to any specific thing, when you look out of the window, at some point, not maybe after a few seconds, this I is at least going to recognize the presence of the world. That's unavoidable because your eyes are open. You're going to see that there is a world outside of you. And at some point, again, within a few seconds, you know that this is I and this is not I. So this I invariably, sooner or later, creates this division. I and not I. Self and not self. So once my I gets attached to this body and mind, I immediately recognize that everything other than this body and mind is not me. So I look at the table, oh, this is not me, this is not me, this is not me, this is not me. And then suddenly you recognize what I am is very small. It's got a very limited power, limited energy. And what I am not is so huge. Well, it's rest of the universe. So I am here, and what I am not is rest of the universe. And that's the problem with I. Because the fear, the genesis of fear, the seed of fear is not in I itself, but in the recognition of the not I. And this fear can go. And this fear may be in the beginning in a very subtle way. It's not like the fear of a snake, because the fear of a snake is very specific. You know a snake, you know you have to run away from it. So that's very particularized fear. I'm just speaking about just a very general seed of fear is in the recognition that what I am not is much bigger, much more powerful, which can really crush me any moment. If there is a tsunami, if there is an earthquake, and if I'm just out on the street without any shelter, there's nothing I can do about it. We recognize how vulnerable we are to the forces of nature. So that's the problem with that. And the only way this fear, gross or subtle, can go away is when this I goes away. Because as long as the I is there, the not I will also be there. And how do we know this? Well, we know it from our own experience. Our I disappears in deep sleep. Your I is there in some form even in dream. Because even in dream, you see other people. You have your dream I, and then there are dream people. So your dream I is separated from the dream world. So there is still a separation there. But in deep sleep, when you're not even dreaming, there is no separation between I and not I. And so because of that non-separation between I and not I, nobody experiences fear of death or anxiety, worry, stress, all of the problems that we have, physical or mental or intellectual. None of those problems exist in deep sleep. And the reason is there is no separation. There is no I, there is no not I, there is no separation, problem solved. Immediately after you wake up, or immediately after you start dreaming, the I and not I come up. And so the practice in Vedanta is to look deeply at this I and find out what is this I. This I seems to be the root of all problem, because I, not I. Again, everything. So if I can look at this I and then decide what I should do to this I to become free from all the problems I experience in life. And the conclusion they reached to, this was not simply an intellectual conclusion. The conclusion they reached through their own direct experience was that all of us are capable of reaching that state which goes beyond I and not I. And how does that become possible? But first of all, recognizing my present I is not the real I. Because if my present I is the real I will never be able to get rid of it. If it's a false I, like the snake seen in a rope, I just need to switch on the light. If the snake were real, switching on the light wouldn't get rid of it. I would have to get a gun or a stick, do something. But if the snake is false, then I just need to switch on the light and say, oh, it's only a rope. Luckily for us, our present I is not real. So no gun can kill this I. That's why that verse in the Gita, which we studied earlier in second chapter, that no weapons can kill it, no water can dry it. So it's not, doesn't belong to the world of matter. So this I that we think we are, this I of matter, the body, mind, is not the real I. And because it's a false I like the snake, all that we need to do is to switch on the light. And the light that we have to switch on here is the inner light, the light of consciousness. And so that is why anahankar means absence of egoism. The next one, Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi Dukkha Dosha Anudarshanam, seeing misery and evil in birth, death, old age and sickness. The word used here in Sanskrit is dosha. Dosha means a fault. Dosha Anudarshanam, looking at the fault, looking at defects. Now, there's one saying, students of Holy Mother, Sharda Devi's life are familiar. It's considered oftentimes the last message of Holy Mother, in which she said, my child, if you want peace of mind, do not look at the faults of others. Rather see your own faults. Learn to make the whole world your own. No one is a stranger, my child. Make the whole world your own. That was Mother's very profound advice. And at some point in future, we'll have a chance to study it, because for all its simplicity, it embodies a very deep philosophical idea. But let's just look at the first sentence. So Mother is asking us, don't look at anyone's faults. And Krishna here is saying, look at these faults. So apparently it just seems like these are contradictory teachings. Now, first of all, Mother is saying don't look at anyone's fault or any faults. What Krishna is saying here is not exactly same, not exactly opposite to that. What Krishna is saying is, I'm not asking us to look at this fault or this person's fault or this object's fault. What he's saying is, look at this whole human experience itself and recognize that it's defective. Recognize that it's not perfect. Recognize the imperfection embodied or embedded in existence itself. So let me put it this way. There are two kinds of sorrows in life. One kind of sorrow we are all familiar with. Some aspects of this sorrow we have all experienced in life. And this kind of sorrow sometimes can come through hunger, it can come through homelessness, it can come through poverty. And these are very real problems in life. it can come through torture, it can come through abuse. And we know there is a lot of suffering in the world that is occurring because of these things. It's a very real, and that sorrow is something that in every generation, in every society, in every culture, people have tried to address those issues. They have not always succeeded. Sometimes they have succeeded in a smaller area to a limited extent. So there may be pockets in this world where the problem of poverty may not exist. Or there may be some areas where homelessness may not exist. But in general, we see that these problems exist. But they are not universal in the sense that not everyone in the world is poor. Not everyone in the world is homeless. Not everyone suffers due to hunger. There are people who, when they are hungry, there is food available. There are people, when they want shelter, there is home available. There are a lot of people for whom it's not available. So there is that kind of sorrow. But there's another kind of sorrow from which no one is exempt. Go east, west, north, south, past, present, and even future. Who can predict the future? But learning from our experience of the past, we might be able to say something about the future as well. And it's this, that there are certain kinds of sorrows from which no one is exempt, has never been exempt. And those are the kind of sorrows Krishna mentions here in this. Those are sorrows and suffering attached to birth, death, old age, and sickness. This is purely at the physical level. None of us is free from this. Rich or poor, east or west. If someone or something is born, that someone or something has to die. So there is this inborn, instinctive fear of death. Not just in human beings, in all living beings. There is the instinctive fear of death. There is the process of aging. When we age, the youth, the vitality, the energy that we have when we were young, as we grow older, that age depletes our energy levels, our vitality. And that has its attending sorrow. So sometimes people speak about old age ailments. So sometimes when someone becomes sick when they are very young, then people think, well, that's not normal. But as we grow older, and thanks to medical science, people are living longer, but not necessarily that they are living illness-free life. The only thing is, if there's an illness now, we can identify it, we can treat it, and bring some amount of at least prolongation of life, if not the quality of life. But illness itself can't be stopped. We might be able to cure many diseases now than we could do maybe 50 or 100 years ago or 200 years ago, but we cannot prevent illness itself. And in fact, the sad truth is that the more the treatments we find to illnesses, some newer illnesses seem to sprout up. And so it just seems like an unending fight against illness and disease. And then, of course, illness, aging, and death. These are the things mentioned here. And the dukkha, the sorrow that comes along with it. Not to speak here, it's just speaking about the physical, but also the mental. A mind that is filled with stress, anxiety, worry. Anxiety about the uncertainties of the future. Again, this seems so inbuilt into our mind that it will be very difficult to find anyone, short of only enlightened beings, who can say they are never stressed, they are not worried about anything in life. There is no fear at all. Because we become truly fearless. I said in the beginning, as long as the I is there, the not I will always be a source of fear. And therefore, fear even in its subtlest forms will disappear only when this I goes. So everyone there is a fear. There is a beautiful passage in the Upanishad, in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Udaram antaram kurute atha tasya bhayam bhavati. The moment I try to separate myself from the rest of the universe, I've already sowed the seeds of fear. Only when I'm not separate from anything, there is no fear, as in deep sleep. So that experience of non-separateness that we have in deep sleep, unfortunately, it's a very unconscious state. Can I experience that non-separateness in a fully conscious state, as when we are awake? And what the Gita says is, yes, we can. So seeing, why is it that we should see the defects of this world? Because if we see that this world is not perfect, that it's a defective product, we won't get attached to it. That's the thing. If you want detachment, as the earlier line pointed out, it's like this. When, say, there's a new product out in the market, and there's a big publicity blitz, and everyone from everywhere you get to see advertisements saying, buy this is what you need, this is wonderful. And they are very effective most of the time. They do such a good job. So, and then you feel like, oh, I must have it. And then maybe you look at some of the early reviews, or you call up your friend and then say, don't ever get it, it's defective. Don't get it, it's a waste of money, don't get it. And you hear it from a bunch of people whose judgments you respect. And then you say, no. No matter how attractive it seemed at one point, the moment you see it's defective, you no longer want it. That's the thing. So look at it this way. I gave earlier the example of someone whom the doctor had said, no more sweets for you. You need to control your sugar. Now, I have this delicious sweet in front of me. Now, if I just see the sweet, I am going to be attracted to it because I love it. There are so many of these, my mental seeds, my samskaras are producing this desire. Get it, get it, get it. But if before just extending my hand and grabbing it, I just look at that sweet for a while and then look at it a little bit more deeply. And then try to imagine. You need, in spiritual life, a creative imagination is very helpful. So rather than actually grab it and eat it, and why don't you then mentally eat it? Now, mentally eating it will not produce much sugar, I imagine. So you eat it mentally. And then you say, okay, now I've eaten it. And now, yes, of course, from your past experience, you know that it will definitely make you happy. And then you realize, well, how much more sugar I've added into my body. And the next time I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, your sugar level is high. Now, you need to start taking this diabetes. You have got this very high diabetes now, and you are hooked on to this. You have to take this medicine for the rest of your life. And then you say, oh my God, now I'm kind of stuck with, and so on. So, I mean, you can paint as terrible a picture as you like. But once you know, just taking this one thing can potentially lead to a very devastating result, then you will not feel like extending your hand very easily then. And that's the general rule in life. Don't rush into taking any decision in general. Act responsibly. Think about everything. You don't have to remain undecided or thinking about it for 20 years, clearly, obviously. But doing something impulsively, most of the sorrow we bring upon ourselves is just being very impulsive. But if we learn to just pause, even if it's for a few seconds before saying something, even not just through actions, even through words, sometimes impulsively we just blurt out something. And And there's nothing you can do. Once the words have gone, you can't take back your words. Sometimes you can see some of this and so on, but it can be very, very damaging. And so a little bit of a pause can help. So that is what this second line of the teaching is, that seeing defects would help us recognize the dangers involved and then make a very informed, intelligent decision about what we should do. So just to conclude, I spoke about two kinds of sorrows. Let me end on a positive note. There are two kinds of joys as well. So one is the joy, and I briefly referred to it at the beginning. One is the joy of, say, here is this sweet, and there is the joy of eating it. And I said, it's very temporary, because as soon as that's over, my joy is gone. I mean, really think about it. As far as the joy of food is concerned, it's very fleeting. It's essentially, it's the distance that food travels, say between 4 to 6 inches, that's all. Maybe the moment you put it in your mouth, right, it's on your tip of your tongue, when all your taste buds are releasing all the juices. And then, of course, if you enjoy the taste, you're going to enjoy it. But how big is your mouth? Essentially, once your food goes beyond this, there is no more taste. The taste is as long as it is in your mouth. Once your food crosses this barrier and goes down, after that, it's just hard work. There's nothing you can do. All the taste has gone. You just have to digest it now. That's all. And so just for this 4 inches of taste and the hard work of several hours digesting it later. And then if it's a food that's not good for you, then you have long-term problems associated with it. So that's what pausing would make you think in these terms. And then you recognize, but if there's some food which is, again, that maybe sometime, as they say, someone said, nothing makes me so sick as health foods. Unfortunately, healthy foods generally are not tasty, but that's not always true. It's possible to have healthy food which are tasty as well, but generally that's a kind of a popular idea. If it's healthy, then it's probably not very tasty. And unfortunately, a lot of junk food is very tasty. But again, even if you look at a health food and say, oh, this doesn't feel tasty, again, you look deeply, just as you looked at that sweet deeply and say, well, if I eat this, then these are the kind of XYZ benefits it can give me. And then you just thinking of how helpful, how wonderful it would be, then you put it in your mouth, it's going to taste better than if you had just thrown it with that kind of, oh my God, I just have to eat it kind of a thing. So let me just conclude by this. So I said there are two kinds of joys. One is the existential joy. One is this joy of just eating a sweet. There is a higher kind of joy, I said, the joy of control, the joy of saying no to what's not good for me. And the highest kind of joy is the joy that comes from the spirit, from my own being. Because every joy that comes from anything outside of me can be taken away from me. But a joy that can come from my own self is there always. The only thing that cannot be taken away from me is me. Whatever can be taken away from me is not me. If death means the body can be taken away from me, I'm not the body. If deep sleep means the mind doesn't function, I'm not the mind. So, if I can find my joy in my me, then I have that joy forever, because no one can take me away from me. But if my joy is to be found in anything other than me, then there is always going to be that danger that that entity which gives me joy, sooner or later, sometime or the other, is going to be away from me. It's going to be taken away from me. I'm going to be separated from it, and that's going to make me miserable. So there is this embedded sorrow that Krishna refers to. If you are attached to the body, you are not free from aging, old age, aging, sickness, and death. If I'm attached to the mind, I'm not free from stress, anxiety, worry, and fear. And if I'm attached to my own self, if I just am attached to myself and nothing else, then no one can take away that joy, that freedom, that perfection, which are the nature of that self. So we have seen today 3 more. Detachment from sensuality, absence of egoism, and seeing the defective nature of existence. So these are 3 more qualities. So we have added, we saw 9 in verse 7, 3 more today, so that makes it 12. So we have 8 more to go, which we will take up next week. If you have any thoughts, questions, ideas. Yeah.
Swamiji, it's just a comment that I had a thought while you were talking, and it's actually like a funny thought. Just imagine going to a psychiatrist and say, okay, yesterday I realized I'm not myself. This is not me. And just, imagine having a conversation with a person who doesn't have any interest or background, that can comprehend. So I was wondering, how psychiatrists and people who work with brain, or I know that there's been a lot of research recently proving that there is soul, that there is more than just body and mind. But yeah, I don't know.
But why would I want to go to a psychiatrist if I know that I'm not the self?
I wouldn't want to go. I'm my own psychiatrist, but it's just talking to someone and saying,
Yeah, clearly. That's true. As I mentioned on earlier occasion, the success in any therapy would depend on the quality of mind of the therapist. And if the therapist is not familiar with the worldview of the patient the therapist is treating, then it's going to be very difficult, because it's important for the therapist to understand the patient well, even if the therapist wants to help the patient. And so if someone says, like, I'm not the body and the mind, and the therapist thinks, well, there's something really wrong with this person, and of course there's going to be a problem, sure. So be careful when you discuss Vedanta with your friends, and if they don't have background, just don't begin by saying you're not the body and mind.
Maharaj, you were talking about detachment. So I understand as a Vedanta student that detachment is very important. But as a student, I need to attach with something, because then there will be no motivation. I understand not to attach with the result, but if I'm not attached with my karma yoga, or I'm not attached with my thought of the spiritual path, how do I will get the result?
No, the results will come. The attachment really means attachment to the result. The attachment, I think it's a big subject, but let me just say today this much, that because attachment is something that automatically happens, it's not always stressed, because it's something that happens anyway. So detachment is what gets stressed. There's never going to be a time when someone will say, there is no attachment. The thing is this, if I have body and mind, it is going to attach itself to something or the other. The problem is, it attaches itself to something or the other and gets stuck there. So what we need is as much power of detachment as of attachment. So when a student has to study, The student will have to be attached to that particular book or the text or the experiment the student is busy with. But once that study is over, once I have to go to another class or do something else, and if I'm still attached to this, then I'm going to miss whatever it is that I'm going to do next. So once that, if I'm engaged in certain activity, I must fully attach myself to it. And that's what concentration means. Concentration means fully being attached to whatever I'm engaged on. But once that activity is over and I have to start doing something else, I must have the capacity to detach my mind fully from it and then attach it to whatever next that I'm doing. So our problem is that we get automatically attached to things that we love doing or attached to ideas that we enjoy, but we don't have the power of detachment. And therefore, when the mind needs to be withdrawn, I'm not able to do it. So essentially, a call to detachment is a call to have control over the mind. So then I get to decide where the mind should attach, how long it should attach, and then I'm able to detach it whenever I want. Right now, my mind, right now all of us are already practicing detachment. We are attached to things that we like and detached from things that we hate. There is another way of looking at it. In some ways, it's possible to say we are attached to everything. We are attached to things we like. We are attached to things we hate. Our hatred attaches us to those things. And there are some things which are not even on our mental radar. And so what this teaching really means, calls us to examine everything around us. See what is good, healthy, positive for us. Attach yourself to that. See what is negative, what is self-destructive, what is weakening me. Detach yourself from that. And even have to do 10 different things. I cannot do all 10 different things at the same time. So I'm going to do them one after the other. So whatever I'm doing, let me attach my mind there. Then when I have to do the second thing, let me withdraw the mind, put it there. Withdraw the mind, do it there. Now we need that capacity. And since attachment is something that generally happens naturally, that is why the Gita speaks more about detachment, not so much about attachment. But we really need, what it really means, a control over the mind. It's I get to decide when I should attach and detach, not the mind. As I said, when you're driving a car, you should get to decide when you should turn left and when you should turn right. Your car shouldn't decide that, which it soon might when the self-driving cars. But even then, even if it's a self-driving car, you are the ones who are going to program it and decide and tell the car, this is where I want to go. But if you tell the car, even if it's a self-driving car, if the car says, you may want to go there, but I want to take you someplace else, then there's a problem, you see? That's the thing, yeah.
Detachment from things, I think it's easier to justify, but if you're detaching from people, like loved ones or family ones, isn't it make you maybe go away from your duties? Is it possible that it will, I can use that excuse and I stop doing my things?
No, I think we have addressed this before. The attachment should be distinguished from love. In fact, and this will sound not very, this will sound very paradoxical, but actually attachment is a hindrance to love. So more the attachment goes out, the better the quality of love will be. And that's why detachment shouldn't be seen. Detachment is completely an internal thing. And you can see Jesus, Buddha, Ramakrishna, and I always give the example of this top one, but even other saints and people who we see as enlightened beings, they were not attached to anyone or anything. They were completely detached, and who could love more than they did? Even today, Even we may not have physically met Buddha, Jesus, and all these great ones, but we are still able to feel the love of Holy Mother, the love of Ramakrishna, and so on. I find it very difficult to say, oh, Holy Mother is attached to me. I don't think so. I may be attached to her, but I don't see a mother being attached to me. So think about it. It's very counterintuitive in many ways, but attachment hinders love. Right now, our general experience in life is a mixture of attachment and love. Towards people whom we love, it's not simply love. There is love and there is attachment. And sometimes the pain that we experience in any loving relationship comes from attachment, not from love. So when that attachment goes away, what will remain in that relationship is simply love. And love can bring only joy. Love can bring only freedom. So every sense of bondage that we experience in a relationship, that doesn't come from love, that comes from attachment. So that detachment produces freedom. Detachment makes us respect our own freedom and freedom of the person we love. And it's freedom that brings real joy, real bliss. So it's a big subject, but don't mix up attachment and love. They are very different psychologically also. Love is something that is the nature of the spirit itself, while attachment and detachment are functions of the mind. So love comes from a very different source. They're not even on the same level. That's the idea.
So Swamiji, just I'm not sure this is a question. It's maybe more of a comment, but just the existential sorrow that we talked about, like death and birth and so forth. I mean, it's very reminiscent of the Buddha's, his path, and then the fact that they use the word dukkha in that particular verse. And so it's just interesting that it's brought up here. And for Buddha, it was enough for him to see that, for him to leave his.
Because Buddha was a Vedanta student. He was a Vedantist.
And it took him, everyone knows about, death and sickness and so forth, but it doesn't make us want to see the shortcomings in this world, but it made Buddha, somebody like the Buddha.
Yeah, I mean, look at Buddha's teaching. He's one of the first of these four noble truths is the reality of suffering. And he's really referring to this suffering that Krishna refers to here. You see? He's referring to that existential suffering. A suffering associated with death, old age, sickness, from which no one is free. He's not referring to homelessness. He's not referring to poverty. He's referring to this existential suffering. Yeah.
Just a comment, Swamiji. I was reading Ramana Maharishi said, even when you're doing an act of good for someone, say, I am not the doer. And I think he uses the word ahamkara, I think. It's a modification of the same word, but I find that as a useful technique to detach from the ego mind.
Even, very good point. You see, even helping someone can produce a bondage. Because if you help in a way the other person feels an obligation to you, feels obliged to you, then you have already bound that person with a sense of obligation. And you have bound yourself with thinking, oh, what a helpful, what a wonderful person I am. I'm helping so many people. So both are in bondage, you see? And so the ideal charity, the ideal way of helping is you help without expecting anything back. Your help to the world of whatever kind should be a free will offering. That I give this, I don't even expect gratitude. I don't even expect thank you. Again, as I've said, even if you don't expect it, doesn't mean it won't come. If it is to come, it will come. And if it is not to come, even if you expect it, it won't come. So your expectation makes no difference. But if I can give something, I should do what is right, I should do what is good. Don't expect anything back. Similarly, the one who receives the gift, if you receive the gift and you're forever going to be like indebted, oh, I've received so much from someone, then your life is going to be miserable. So gratitude is great, but gratitude means also recognizing that into some ways, the ideal that I get from the world what I need, and I will do my best to return to the world whatever I can give. Sometimes I may not be able to give as much as I get, but that's not for lack of trying. So that's the idea. That, and if I cannot give it back to the same person who gave something to me, and it's not always possible to do that, as they say, pay it forward. If someone helps you, and sometimes you are helped by total strangers, and you never see that stranger again, and you say, well, I'm grateful to that stranger, but then how can I pay back? You may not be able to pay back to that person, but I can then help someone else. The help I've received from one source, let me pass it on to someone. And some things can never be paid back. The love that we get from our elders in the family, the love of a mother for a child or a father for a child. I mean, who can say can return that love? How can you pay back that love? No one can pay back that love. So what do I do then? What do I do with that sense of gratitude in my heart? I can do that then by loving someone else. So the love that I've received from my family, from my friends, from everyone, I can love others in my life. I can love my family, I can love my friends. They may not exactly always be the same people, but that love which has come to me from the world, I become just an instrument. Through me, it then moves out into the world. That's the idea. So when I become simply an instrument, then it's much easier then to become free from that sense of I. Rather than saying, I'm loving this person or I'm helping this person, it's like, well, I received so much love. I'm simply passing on. I'm just a conduit, a doorway, a kind of a medium. So I receive help, I'm giving help. I've received love, I'm giving love. So then it's nothing that I'm doing, it's just kind of passing through me. And when I try to emphasize my I'm trying to appropriate what is not mine. So the example sometimes they give is, let's say sometimes with the rainwater, when water or snow collects on the roof, and you have these pipes bringing down that water from the roof. And so in some of these old buildings you can see, or old houses, those pipes will have sometimes maybe the shape like a mouth of a lion or a tiger or something like that. And so if that pipe or that thing were to claim like, I'm giving this water, no, you're not giving that water. That water which was collected in the beginning, it's simply passing through you. So whatever love and help that I give, the moment I say I'm giving it, there's a problem. But all that I can say is, it's just passing through me. The love that I've received is passing through me and going back to the world. The help that I have received is passing through this and going out to the world. And we can become refineries also. So if I have now, but say, well, I have received a lot of hatred. Should I pass it through me and go as hatred? Now I can become a refinery. So let me, even if hatred comes to me from outside, let me refine it. And let that transform that hatred into love. So hatred it's like crude oil goes into a refinery, and then you have this refined oil coming out, which can be used for useful purposes. So all this crudeness can come, and I will refine and let it go. So that's a service to the world, but that service is so subtle, people don't recognize it. People recognize going and feeding the hungry, going and building homes for the homeless, and that's service, no doubt. But this is a very subtle service, that the anger, the hatred that has come to me, if I can change it and then pass it as love, as understanding, as compassion, I'm serving the world. This kind of service will not make headlines. This kind of service people may not even recognize. And it's not, if you're doing it for recognition, then it's not service actually. Again, we are reinforcing the I. So think about it this way. we normally get to hear the names of only these people who make headlines. So this person, Bill Gates, is giving so much money. That's great, that's wonderful, no doubt about it. But think about countless other people who don't come in the news, we don't even know their names, but who have received a lot of unhappiness in life, who have received a lot of injustice, a lot of hatred, a lot of anger. But such people quietly, instead of in return hating others or getting, they suffer. But through their own struggle, maybe through prayer or worship or whichever way, they're able to process all that negativity that the world has hurled at them, and then are able to love their family, their friends. Even if I can love one other person, one other family, with that unselfishness, in spite of the injustice done to me, this service is not in any way less than someone who may be giving millions and billions to people. Although, as I said, this may not be recognized by others, but you know deep down that you are serving the world. So we need to understand this concept of service in a much, much deeper way. It's very, very subtle. Yeah, that's the thing. So we'll stop today, and when we meet next week, we'll begin with verse number 9. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. We bow down to Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother. On Sunday, we will have Antar Yoga, we'll have reading, music, reflection, and also, as I have announced on Sunday, we'll have a birthday celebration for everyone born in the month of February. So please come for the cake, which will not be very sweet, but it will be healthy, and of course also soup. So that will be on Sunday next. On Tuesday and Wednesday, our Aarti and meditation will also continue as usual, and next Wednesday, we will continue with the study of the Gita. So let's end with the prayer now. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto you.